So you were a great nurse. You were a labor and delivery nurse. Tell me a little bit about where you were and what you and Melvin were experiencing when you found out you were pregnant with your son.
Yeah, so when I got pregnant with my son, so I did labor and delivery for the first 5 years of my nursing career. And then the last 3 years, I transitioned to being a home health nurse because Mackenzie was born and I wanted more freedom and flexibility with my schedule. So I wanted to be home more with her. So working as a home health nurse gave me that autonomy.
So you already had two baby girls at
So
home.
I had two baby girls at home. And I decided to, before I had Mackenzie, I decided to go back to school to further my career and become a nurse practitioner. In the middle of my nursing program, I got pregnant with her. So that was like, okay, well, I'm not going to clearly finish school because she was born prematurely and I want to focus on my baby. So 3 years later, as I was working as a home health nurse, I decided, oh, I'm done with having kids. Let me try to go back and pursue and become a nurse practitioner, which is what I was doing when I got pregnant with her. Had the support of my husband, and I enrolled back into the nursing program. And then I found out that I was pregnant that January with my son. And it wasn't a planned pregnancy. And it was like, oh, like, this just came out of nowhere. And well, not really, but
How did Melvin feel when he found out you guys were pregnant with a third?
Excited. We were excited. So when we found out, it was kind of like a surprise because we were not planning for it, but we were excited, to bring another child into this world. And then we found out that it was a boy, and that was just like even more like exciting. He was super excited that he was going to have a son. And I carried him for 8 months, and everything was great during the pregnancy.
Felt good.
Felt good, had no issues.
Normal doctor's appointments, ultrasounds.
Everything was normal. And
you knew what to look for because this had been your expertise.
Yes.
You were a labor and delivery nurse for over 5 years.
Nurse. Thought I did everything right. Thought I knew everything about labor and delivery. And I did know a lot. And that's why when it happened and I had the uterine rupture, I knew exactly what was happening, which was the most tormenting thing ever when I was en route to the hospital because I knew like this is bad.
So 8 months, how many weeks is that?
So I was like 33 or 34 weeks.
Which for some people, 33, 34 weeks could get you very close to a viable pregnancy.
Absolutely. Like, you can take that baby home if, everything is good even at 34 weeks.
Yeah.
They give steroids and the baby's doing fine. The baby can go home. So he definitely could have went home at that 34 weeks mark. And
so what happened to you? Tell me about the uterine rupture because I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. So when I had Mackenzie, she was an emergency C-section because I had a placenta abruption. And that's also, rare because usually placenta abruption happens when either you're hit in the stomach, an accident happens, or if you're a drug user. None of that happened. Okay. I was getting Mia ready because we all have the same birthday, myself, Mackenzie, and Mia.
Which is amazing.
It was Mia's birthday. I was getting her ready for her party at her preschool, and then I just started bleeding out of nowhere. So I had to be rushed to the hospital. They did an emergency C-section, and because of that high risk of having a placenta abruption, the doctor had to cut my uterus vertical. I have a bikini cut, but once you do the bikini cut, once they hit the uterus, the fastest way to get the baby out is to just slice the uterus up and down. And that saved her. But it also put me at risk for any subsequent pregnancies that I had after that because the uterus was cut from the top down vertical and not transverse, that when you contract, the uterus contracts from the top. Okay. So every time you contract, it puts stress on the uterus and it puts stress on that scar. So if it puts stress on that scar can open up and burst. And that is what a uterine rupture is.
Did you ever have a feeling during your pregnancy with Milan, throughout any of this period, did you have anything in the back of your mind, okay, I had this placenta issue. I need to be thinking about this, that my uterus is in a little bit more fragile state than it was with Mia? You did?
I did. And I even brought it up to the doctor. And that's why, I wanted to bring awareness to this as well because my doctor blew me off. And he was like, oh, you'll be fine. We're going to schedule your C-section. And obviously, I'm not going to live in guilt, but I dealt with it for a long time. Like, I should have spoke up more to like advocate to have a C-section earlier instead of like allowing the doctor to say, oh no, we're going to schedule you for next week. I was in the hospital, I was having contractions, and then I went home. They discharged me home. And I fought with the fact of like, oh, I should have stayed in the hospital because they could have just delivered him there. So I went home, and then like a week later, I started contracting again. And the more you contract, the more it rips at that scar. So the week later that I came home from the hospital, the scar probably couldn't take it anymore. It was already weak. And I remember Melvin had went out to a family function, so he wasn't at home. As soon as he came home, I felt like a burst in my stomach. And like I knew then like what was happening.
And what did you feel? Were you in terror?
I was terrified. And I was in so much pain. And I remember telling myself like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get pregnant again because it was so painful. And I remember thinking like, I just hope everything's okay. When we got to the hospital, they put my baby on the monitor, you know, through the monitor in my belly, and his heart rate was so low. So, and the doctor wasn't there. And I remember asking and yelling like, where's the doctor? His heart rate is low. Like the doctor needs to come now.
And they're ignoring you.
They were, I wouldn't say they were ignoring me. They called the doctor, but the doctor was at home. This was not a high-risk hospital. So they did not have like a 24-hour OB doctor that was on call that can do the C-section. Because I worked at high-risk hospitals, usually when a patient comes in, there's an emergency, there's an on-call doctor that can come in and hurry up and just do the C-section to get the baby out. This hospital was not equipped for that.
Okay.
And he had to come from home. So the time that it took him to get from home to the hospital, too much time had passed. And when he finally got there, my son had no heart rate. And at that point, it was too late.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Worst possible scenario.
Of course. It was terrible. It was terrible.
You know, we read all the time about maternal health rates
Yeah.
for Black women. And it's like, the thing that bothers me the most about this story is you were already your best advocate because you know this work.
Yep.
Think about the average person that doesn't know this
Doesn't
work.
know. Yeah.
You know, that is afraid to advocate for themselves, that is hushed and quieted down and silenced and made to feel like what they're asking for is too much, or where they're treating you like the pain that you're feeling. You don't feel pain. Like that's their big thing in the hospital sometimes, right? Like, oh, well, your pain tolerance is higher. There's all these tropes and all this racism that happens for women of color when they're in the hospital. And you lost your son.
Yeah.
And in that moment, what did you cling to?
So in that moment, first I was angry.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was angry with the hospital. I was angry with the doctor. And I believe I went through all the grieving stages.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through the point of like asking why. Like, why did this happen to me? I did everything I was supposed to do. And then I had to learn to, accept.
Because Milan didn't pass away at first. He was on life support for a period of time.
But there was so he was on life support because we were not ready to let go.
Yeah.
We were still holding on to hope. And his body was there, but he was not there. Like
Did you hold
had
him?
no functioning. Yes, I was able to hold him. And, we have pictures, and it was so hard for me to even talk to this about his situation with my girls. I didn't even know how to tell them, like, your brother's not coming home.
Oh.
So yeah, it was really hard. But I do cherish the moments that I was able to spend with him. I remember going into the hospital when he was on life support, and I would read Bible scriptures to him. And I just felt like, even though he was here for a very short time, his purpose was so big and so impactful because he brought me closer to God.
And that wasn't a part of your childhood. That's one of the things
Well,
I remember from the book.
Exactly.
You did not grow up in the church.
No.
Is this through losing your son? Is that how you found God?
That's how I
Was
found
that
God.
your breakdown before your breakthrough?
Yep.
And
Because God was the only spirit that I could hang on to.
that was it. You would have died yourself
Yeah.
without God. And even though you had Melvin, and I'm sure your mom was there,
Yes.
and I'm sure your dad and your brother were present, and you have a whole community of people that love you, you clung on to Jesus.
Yep. Because Jesus is the only one who can save me.
The way, the truth, and the way.
Going through that. And I knew that reading his word and his scripture that I was going to come out on the other side of this. And I knew that I still had purpose in me, because having a uterine rupture is also very risky for the mom. The mom can lose her life. And I was clinging on to hope and anger, but also just very happy and grateful that I'm still here.
Amen.
And I'm here present, and I can raise my 2 girls.
Oh, yeah.